Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our StarPRNT SDK training webinar that will be presented by Marcelo Munoz and John Levin. Marcelo, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Great. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody that's out there. I'd like to thank you first for your time and attending. This will be a introduction into what StarPRNT SDK is. So let's get started. So first question I'm sure everybody here wants to know is, what is an SDK? I'm sure many of you have heard it mentioned, some of you are familiar with it, but to get a complete understanding, we want to know where it comes from, sort of how we got to this point. So back in the day, when we were using programs and applications with PCs, we got used to using floppy disks for drivers. Eventually those became CDs. I'm sure everybody still has a library of those in their office somewhere. And eventually even the internet to this day provides the facility for you to run, get started with different programs and applications. However, today there are some new and different peripherals. Obviously, tablets and smartphones have pretty much exploded onto the scene, and this has changed the dynamic, the playing field, if you want to say, to how applications are created and how they're run by us every day of the week. So where are we today? Today we're at a threshold where, with all these smartphones and tablets and even traditional printing, programmers are using what is called an SDK. What is it? It's a software development kit. In essence, it's just a package that allows a developer to get all of our printers and integrate it into their own software applications. In essence, it's hard-coded inside of the program itself. In layman's terms, it's a driver in the new world of tablets and smartphones, so to speak.
I'm sorry, Marcelo, to interrupt. We have an attendee saying that you're breaking up a little bit. If you could just adjust your phone or headset, whatever you're using.
I'm using my microphone on the computer, so.
Okay.
So, you know, there's a lot of components or details that go within an SDK. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And at the core of that is the API. This is essentially another acronym. There's lots of acronyms in this presentation. And this is an application programming interface. Basically what this is, it's a file that has the source code that we as a manufacturer have made and imported it for the application source code that developers are going to be using. So this is what in essence, is the driving force behind what an SDK is. What does our API have? Basically, our Star I/O, it allows developers to use different methods of implementing different functions that come within our printer. This could be printer status, text formatting, where to cut, open up the cache drawer. Basically what communicates the printer directly to the POS application. As a point of comparison, what an API is versus what a driver is, to sort of kind of get you to understand what the difference is between one or the other. It's not a packaged software. Basically what it is a lot of code, programming code that is implemented into another piece of software. This API gives the POS application the ability to talk directly to the printer, whereas before with a driver, we would have the driver communicate with the printer communicate with the operating system. Everything was handled through the operating system. Now with an I/O, with an API in the SDK, this type of hopscotch no longer exists. You'll have a direct connection between the printer and the application itself. So what are the main benefits that you can see with an SDK, specifically Star SDKs in an API? What is the benefit of having this type of approach when you're integrating a printer with a particular software and application? For one, there's no need to look up printer commands in a manual. Different printers might have different commands, different applications. This can cause a lot of confusion and headaches, especially on the development side. Obviously, there'll be a lot less code to write. We do that work for you by offering these APIs. And in the long run, what this offers is a reduce in cost and time of development. Plus also the fact our SDK is universal for all Star Micronics printers, and that would be mobile and traditional desktop and MPOP. So what benefit also does this have for the developer? The ability to work with every single platform that's out there today. It could be Windows, iOS, Mac, Linux. We have SDKs available for each and every single one of them, which gives any developer flexibility to attack any market that they would like. If they want to work with iOS, they want to work with Android, Windows, not a problem for Star SDK. A quick comparison chart here. Not going to go one by one. Just take a quick look here at the comparisons with most of the basic functionalities that you'll find in SDKs that's out there in the market, what's needed to work with each particular type of application. You'll see that our SDK is the most versatile and the most complete available. This is something that we pride ourselves in for a very, very long time, as we are always leading and innovating. We've definitely done our homework in this aspect and made sure that our SDK has been approved and tested with each of these particular cases, especially in the Bluetooth realm, Swift with Apple, scaling for your traditional receipt needs. So there's many SDKs available as far as for what particular type of technology you want to work with. We've pretty much covered all the bases in this instance. So in essence, it's what type of flavor you're looking for. What is it that you're developing? What is it that you're looking to implement? We will have something there for you. In the traditional printing world, we have, for example, image scaling from 4 to 3, 3 to 4 inch prints. This is great for if you're looking to economize on paper or looking to add graphics. This is a great tool. There's also image rotation. If you want to start printing coupons, for example, this is a great way to get that done. We also have our digital receipt service, All Receipts, which in itself can be its own presentation, but we'll just say that this is a fantastic add-on to any type of digital printing solution. It is the way to go. We have our Star Web Print. This is basically a driverless printing for web applications. Our SDK contains the JavaScript APIs, sample code, and documentation for you to get worked on that. It's a truly innovative way to print. It's the first type of technology of its kind. That extends, of course, also into the Bluetooth realm. Web print is also available to print directly to any Bluetooth printer, whether it's using Android or iOS. We also have PassPrint. This is a technology that we created to get into that world of the FileMaker developers to create their web applications doing URL schemes. We found that this is a fantastic way for non-traditional POS applications to be able to print to a receipt printer communicating through Bluetooth. Our documentation in the SDK has sample code and a sample page, so it can also teach those would-be up-and-coming developers on how to use this type of application. Originally, it started with iOS. Recently, it has added Android to its extensions. Our latest and greatest, Star CloudPrint. We're really excited about this technology. This is a new technology that permits a printer to receive commands from the cloud, remote printing from anywhere in the world. We're really excited about how this can change the scope, especially when it comes to ordering online through an application to a restaurant, for example. Our SDK is complete as well with a rundown on how CloudPrint works, how to set it up with a remote server, and there's also sample codes that are available upon requests. Quick rundown on what is available today in the recent version of the StarPRNT SDK. Our version is 5.3. There is iOS and Android support, and also now with the new Windows Modern UI, Windows 10 users, PracticePrint 2.0, and the web print browser has now all receipt support. So this is definitely something that has solidified ourselves as being a great source of a stable development, and there are new things on the horizon that will come that we will share with you as soon as they're made available. So with that, I would like to take any questions.
Actually, this is John Levin. I'm the product integration manager with Star. I just wanted to jump in and add a couple things before we get to some of the questions. Hopefully my audio is working. So
I can hear you, John.
Thank you. As Marcelo mentioned, we really try to cover all of our bases. We're not trying to push anyone down a particular development path. We want to have solutions for native web, cloud-based applications. Wherever our software partners are going, we want to make sure we have solutions ready for them. So you can kind of see that in what Marcelo presented today. For our software partners and ISVs on the call today, if you've taken a look at our SDK, or maybe you implemented it, 2-3 years ago, it's definitely time to take another look at it. We've done in the last year or so, we've really done a major overhaul of our SDKs to accomplish a couple purposes. So as Marcelo mentioned, they're much more API based now. So originally our SDKs were quite sample code based, and as things changed in the development community, it became very clear to us that we needed to make more kind of developer-friendly APIs for communicating with our printers, so developers don't have to worry about things like specific emulations or what a specific command is to do something on a printer. We don't want you to have to worry about that. So we're taking care of all that behind the scenes and giving you nice developer-friendly APIs to work with. So we really overhauled the SDKs to focus more on those APIs. And then what we've also done is we've taken a look at all the different platforms that we have SDKs for, so iOS, Android, Windows Modern apps, so the UWP apps, Windows Desktop applications. And then we've taken those SDKs and made sure all of the features and kind of the structure of the SDKs were the same across the board. So if you're going from platform to platform, you're going to have the same experience with our SDKs. So definitely, if you haven't taken a look at the SDKs in a while and you're a developer, definitely take a look again. So some of the things that we're really focusing on now is making those SDKs even more valuable, especially to MPOS application developers. So we're focusing on things like adding peripheral support. So of course, we have long supported the printer and the cash drawer, which we sell, but now we're also adding support for other peripherals such as barcode scanners, scales, customer-facing displays, which will plug into some of our printers that support these peripherals. So we recently released some of this peripheral support in our MPOP products, and we'll continue along that. Really, we're just trying to provide a lot of value to the MPOS developers out there. who have issues with connectivity. You know, you don't have to spend, you know, a bunch of money on a lot of Bluetooth peripherals. Now you can use USB peripherals plugged into products like our MPOP, and they'll all function through our SDK, which you're already very familiar with and may have implemented into your applications. And then just real quick before I take everyone's time, just a quick note to our resellers on the call. So you might be listening to this going, okay, you know, what do I need to do with an SDK? You know, maybe nothing specifically, but you might be working with software companies out there, and you might be wondering how to put our hardware products together with their application. You know, please, our contact information, mine specifically, I'm John Levin, the Product Integration Manager at Star. Get them in touch with us. We'll make it very easy for them to integrate our SDK into their application, so you can sell our products with their software together. So please feel free to introduce me to anyone that you're working with that you need to have them add support for our products. I'll make it very easy for them. We've got a whole team on staff to help them develop for our products. All right, so any questions? Thank you for everyone's time.
All right, thank you, John. We do have some questions. First, I do want to mention that anyone that was experiencing some difficulty in hearing the audio, we will be sending recording following the webinar, and that audio should come in clearly. So the first question we have is, does StarPRNT SDK version 5.3 support both line and graphic modes?
The answer is yes, it does.
All right.
So oftentimes it will depend on the specific model. So many of our models, both support of hardware models, support line and raster or graphic mode printing. And then some, like our very popular TSP100 series, are raster only. So just be aware that you are not able to use Star Line on the TSP100 series. But that's a hardware limitation, not an SDK limitation.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, do we support, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Xamarin development?
Oh, Xamarin?
Yes, thank you.
Xamarin, yes. So,
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so we hear that loud and clear from the development community. So we actually are working on developing an SDK specifically for Xamarin right now. I don't have the schedule. I believe late summer, if I remember correctly. So certainly we can get back in touch with whoever asked that question and keep you updated on our schedule. It is possible. We do have many software partners that are using Xamarin that built their own bindings for the for our SDK. So it is possible with Xamarin to use native SDKs, native APIs. You just have to build, I believe, what's called what Xamarin refers to as a binding, which basically adapts that native SDK for the Xamarin environment. So it is possible, but we are in the process of developing a Xamarin-specific SDK to make that even easier for our developers going forward.
Bree, just I want to let everybody know that's on the webinar. If they have a question in Spanish, feel free to type it out, and I'll translate that for John and get it answered for them as well. Si hay alguien que quiere escribir algo en español, por favor háganlos y yo lo traduzco al inglés.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Yep.
Okay, next question is, should we use OPAS for WPF?
Should we use OPAS for WPF? I'll have to look into that one.
Okay. And
thank you. I'll make a note of that question.
Okay. And our next question is, how much effort to use the SDK specifically for cloud?
So if you're looking to communicate from the cloud to the printer, that would be our cloud print technology that Marcelo mentioned. certainly I can send out more information on that. I know, Marcelo, we were just kind of briefly going over some of our different types of SDKs. But to implement the CloudPrint protocols is quite simple. So it's all JSON based and uses simple HTTP requests to provide that information back down to the printer. So basically how it works is the printer is going to be essentially polling a URL on your server periodically looking for a new print job. So to the person who asked that question, certainly I can send more information on the CloudPrint protocol and help you with that.
Okay, another question regarding CloudPrint. How is the printer addressed? By location ID, IP address, or name?
Sorry, can you ask that question one more time?
Yes, with CloudPrint, how is the printer addressed? By ID, IP address, name? I guess that's just how.
Yeah, so and I'm going to show my ignorance a little bit of the details of how it works. But so you're not using IP address. The IP address in this case doesn't matter. That's really actually a really nice benefit of CloudPrint because you're not pushing anything down to the printer. The printer is polling the cloud. So you're actually injecting a URL on your server into the CloudPrint printer during the initial setup. So even if you move that printer around or for whatever reason the IP address changes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anything. But yeah, there is an ID that is associated with the print job too, and also it uses the MAC address for the printer to help make sure that you're sending the right print jobs to the right printer. And again, I can get take that offline after the call and get into more detail with one of our tech guys.
Okay, I'm going to reword this question a little bit. For the iOS SDK, it looks like this person is having some trouble with the SM port. Says it doesn't respect the value, and sometimes it takes 1 minute to answer if the printer is offline. John, do you think you could take that?
Yeah, that I'd like to take offline. So I'll get one of the development support guys from my team in touch with that. So if the person that asked that question can, I don't know if we have their contact info, email address, or phone number.
Martin, I believe that was you that asked the question. Feel free to reach out to myself or to John. The email is there on screen, and we'll send somebody out to help you out with that.
Okay. This question is, when will the customer-focused displays become available, or is a SIR the only example? I'm assuming this is related to the MPOP display that you mentioned.
Yeah, the customer-facing display, I believe that comes out, we will start offering that for sale next month. I don't recall the exact date. I'll have to look that up, but yeah, in the very short term, roughly next month, we will be offering that. It's already been built into the SDK, so you can start developing for it. But we'll have the actual hardware to sell, which we'll be selling through Star Micronics through our channel very shortly.
Okay. Next question is, how seamless is the interface between the BLE printers and the standard Bluetooth?
Yeah, it's pretty easy since what I would recommend doing is using our search method in the SDK to find the printers, and then it'll find any of them. So the major difference between like the kind of legacy Bluetooth models and our SML200, SML300 BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy models is you never actually pair with the BLE models. So you're never going into like iOS settings and pairing with those models. It only happens, it never pairs. You actually just connect with those models at the application level. So you're still going to search for it using our SDK in your application, but if there's a BLE printer in range, it'll just find it in your application without the user having to go and pair with it or anything like that. And then your application will just grab it, talk to it, send the print job. So yeah, as far as integration goes, it's very straightforward, very roughly, the same to integrate to either.
Okay. Let's have a few more. Sorry, one second. Do you recommend using Star SDK or PLS for Net in Windows WPF?
I guess either. I mean, of course, we always love to have our SDK integrated. It's a little, the thing with like OPAs and the standards is, you're always kind of limited. It's always because they're universal standards. They've kind of got to dumb it down to all the products on the market. So with our SDKs, you not only get basically with the SDKs you get access to all of the features that our printers have, right? So it could be physical features of the printer, or it could be things like our all receipts digital receipt service, which is a free service that comes with our printers. It's a way of getting digital receipts, and maybe we already had a webinar on this. If not, we'll have one shortly, I'm sure. But you can implement that with our receipt printers using our SDK, and of course that's not going to ever be a part of OPAs or anything like that. So I always recommend it when you can to use our SDK, because it just gives you a lot more options and a lot more full control over our printers. But of course, it requires development, so it's kind of a trade-off either way, I suppose.
Okay, thank you, John. Another question: can we send images from the API to print along with the text, or does it have to be stored in the printer always?
Yeah, you can send images. Yeah, that's no problem. It doesn't have to be stored on the printer.
Okay.
The times you might want to store an image on the printer are, on some of the slower transmission or slower means of communication, like Bluetooth. It might just quicken up the printing process just a little bit if you're sending all text and then storing a store logo on the printer or something like that. So if you're in an environment where speed of printing is the absolute priority, and you're using Bluetooth interface, which is just by nature it's slower data transmission than things like Ethernet or USB, then you can consider storing it on the printer. But otherwise, yeah, you can send it from your application using the SDK. That's no problem.
Okay. And does Star have plans to add WebPrint support for cache drawers?
We already do have WebPrint support for cache drawers. You'll see it. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I believe it's called a peripheral. It's something peripheral drive or something like that in our WebPrint SDK, but we refer to it as the peripheral drive, not specifically as cache drawer, which can cause some confusion sometimes. But yeah, it's already supported through WebPrint and has been since the beginning, since it was released.
Okay.
Feel free to reach out after if you need more help on finding the specific method in our WebPrint SDK.
Are there VB.NET examples of the SDK?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Are there VB.NET examples of the SDK?
Yeah, we do have a VB.NET. It's not so far. So I mentioned earlier that we were bringing a lot of our platforms up to the same kind of spec. So iOS, Android, our Windows UWP, and the Windows Desktop SDKs are kind of up to the same spec. So far for the Windows, desktop applications, the one that is the kind of fully modernized, fully updated SDK is the C# one. We do have a VB.NET SDK. I believe offhand, I can't exactly remember, but I believe we had it for some of our desktop printers, and then a separate one for our portable printers, if I'm not mistaken. But won't quite have the same features as some of our, as the C# one, for example. But yeah, we do have that, and I'm happy to, reach out to me, and I'm happy to direct you to the right place.
All right. In Xcode, can this SDK be used in a library?
Yeah, I'm not a developer, so I believe the answer to that question is yes. But I'd rather have someone from my team that's a developer answer more specifically.
All right. And for the iOS, for the iOS SDK, is it possible to handle multiple clients printing on the same printer at the same time?
Multiple clients printing on the same printer. So, you know, the most common example of that would be like a kitchen printer. So I'll kind of use that. So you'll have multiple clients, you know, whether iPads out on the restaurant floor, all printing to the same kitchen printer, which is common. So when they say at the same time, technically no, but practically yes. So what I mean by that is you cannot literally, so that it's only, we call it single session, so there's one device can connect and print to that printer at a time, so it's not, can't be done in parallel, but it can be done serially very quickly. So basically what is very common to do is to build a retry logic into your application. So let's say, you know, iPad 1 goes to print, and then iPad 2 tries to print to the same printer before iPad 1 has released the port. You know, usually what most people will do is they'll just build a quick retry logic on there, so it'll just wait, try again in a second or something like that, and then, you know, do that one or two times, and you know, the printer will finish printing and you'll be able to print. So you build a logic like that, and it works pretty well.
John, I have a question here that was in Spanish. If
Sure.
we plan to add support, web print support for cache drawers.
Yep. Oh, yeah, sorry, I think that was already asked, but yes, ever since the beginning of when we released WebPrint, we have always supported cache drawers. So you'll, and we can provide a link to exactly where in the SDK that is, but I believe we refer to it as peripheral element or something like that in the WebPrint SDK. But I'm happy to provide a, you know, an actual link via email afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next question. With intermittent connectivity conditions over Bluetooth, is there a preferred way to pause resume prints and the connection smoothly?
I'd rather refer to one of the guys on my team, so I'll let's bring that offline if we can. The person who wrote that can connect after the conference.
All right, got it. And will the customer-facing display use Ethernet and Star WebPrint?
It will. Let's see. It will. Did they say Ethernet and Star WebPrint?
Yes.
So no, it won't be Ethernet. What it is, it's actually a USB interface. So it'll plug into products like our MPOP, which has some USB ports on the bottom. And then we're planning on extending that kind of peripheral support to other models. But today it'll, or you know, at launch it will be with the MPOP. So basically any means of communicating to the MPOP through our like iOS and Android SDKs, for example, you will have an API method for driving that customer display as well.
Okay, just a few more questions here. How do we send images and in what format?
Sorry, say that one more time.
How do we send images and in what format?
How do we send images in web format? I'm assuming
in what format?
Oh, in what format? Right. I guess it depends on what technology we're talking about. So our SDKs, our CloudPrint has a little wider range of image support. I'll give a more specific answer offline. I've got to look it up. I don't remember the exact. I don't want to give an incorrect information. I know at the SDK we'll do like bitmaps, but I think there are other. I think PNGs. Yeah, I want to look it up to be specific, so I can take that offline as well.
Okay. Another question.
Provide incorrect. Sure.
Another question regarding images. How does the SDK handle transparent images. In the Bluetooth printers, it prints black instead of white or transparent.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to look that up.
Okay. So next question, the printer widths may vary. What is required to ensure that there is no truncation on the printed output?
No truncation on the printer's output.
Yes.
So how does the SDK determine that?
What is required to ensure that that does not happen?
Yeah, let's take that one offline because I want to have some follow-up questions for that.
Okay. Do we plan to support CocoaPod for Xcode or a artifact for Gradle in Android?
So I can answer some of that. Some of that I'll hand off to the developers on my team. But we do not have an officially supported Star Micronics CocoaPod currently. That's something I've kind of been pushing for a little bit personally, but we do not have that today. So some of the other questions. So Brianna, are we able to note down these questions and who asked them so we can follow up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So some of these I'd like to have the answer come from one of our developers.
Okay. Do we support Calypso?
Calypso. Yeah, I'll have to follow up. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Ray, can I get that Spanish question in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hilda Guevara asks, when there's two printers and they're using Bluetooth protocol, how does the SDK distinguish one printer from the other?
I guess it kind of depends. So on I suppose what platform, but the name. So I'm guessing the nature of that question came from the fact that many of our printers will identify themselves or give themselves the Bluetooth name of Star Micronics, and that's because some of the printers have a shared interface card, so we don't necessarily know from the interface what printer it is. So in that case, what you generally want to do if you want to differentiate between two printers that are kind of identifying themselves as quote-unquote Star Micronics is you can actually use, for most of our models, we have I think it's called Star Setting Utility in the iOS and Android app stores, and you can actually change the Bluetooth name there so to whatever you want. So you can then be, you can have them called Printer 1 and Printer 2 or Kitchen and Receipt Printer, or whatever you want to call it, so you can easily differentiate them. But a lot of the actually a lot of the newer printers that have an inbuilt Bluetooth interface, like the MPOP and the TSB103 series Bluetooth printer, some of the portable printers, they give themselves they have unique Bluetooth names. So it'll be the name of the printer and the last several digits of the serial number, I believe. So you can always tell them apart that way.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
All right. The last question I have here is, what are the key advantages of the Star SDK?
Key advantage of the Star SDK is, well, really, it depends what kind of perspective you're coming from. So it's not quite a straightforward question to answer, but really it's about getting full control of the printer and getting all the the value-add services that come with it, such as the all receipts, digital receipt, Star Cloud services features. So in mobile environments such as iOS and Android, really it's not the only option for printing, but it's certainly the best option for printing. Because of some of the native inbuilt printing methods like AirPrint, things like that, are really a little, they don't, for a full-fledged point-of-sale environment, they aren't quite sufficient. So really, to get the printing experience you're going to need in a real kind of fast-paced robust point-of-sale environment, the SDK is by far the best means to achieve that.
Okay, thank you, John. Marcelo, did you have any other questions?
None that I can see here. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to call again. Our contact was on the screen. Marcelo and I are it sounds like we've got a lot of developers on the call with really good questions. So we will certainly follow up with you after the call.
Yes, Chris. Sorry about that.
We've got answers to all your questions, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for participating. And we really rely on everyone, this kind of questions and feedback to really guide our development as well to understand what you guys need. So we really take that to heart. So we'll continue this dialogue after the call with everyone asking questions. So thank you very much.
Yes, and Chris, your 3 questions will be answered.
Okay, thank you, everyone. As Marcelo and John mentioned, any questions that were unanswered, we will have them, and I'll have John or Marcelo follow up with you directly. We will also be sending around a recording of the webinar within the next week. So thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everybody, for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.